Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the Stacey West team would like to welcome you to their 5th live event and the first with a proper title, the 2025 Royal Ramble. A little bit of housekeeping first. Please keep your phones on silent, and in the highly unlikely event of an emergency, just watch out for where Gaz runs to and follow him. Now, with that out of the way, please welcome your Stacey West Podcast team. Coming in first, all the way from sunny Gibraltar via not-so-private jet, a man with a shiny head and lower visibility than the Oldham FA Cup game in 2016, and also a man who forgot to submit an entrance theme request. It's Charlie, Billy Big Bollocks Beeston.
I am not dancing. That was the one rule I had.
And next up, with an XE, that's expected entrance, of 5.8 seconds, hailing from parts unknown, well, Rugby, he's the Carol Vorderman of the Stacey West. It's Chris, the Statman Lamming. Stats. Stats.
It's the best one.
Making his way to the stage, an original member of the Stacey West team. He had to research where to come tonight, so it's a good job Rachel was on hand to assist. It's Ben Lego Ward. And finally, the best member of the team. He's fit, he's funny, and he's fairly obviously written all of these intros himself. It's humble Gary Hutchinson. Normally, I am responsible for the technical issues, but it seems like Gary is having an issue with his stool.
I think
that came out very wrong.
Yeah, I got fingered for that in December.
Yeah.
Right.
Not guilty.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our show, and thank you for coming. Just going to run through roughly what we're going to do for you tonight. But first of all, happy to be here, chaps?
Oh,
yeah.
Delighted.
It's really nice.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I was here, yeah.
So this is the first show that we've done where we haven't had any special guests up at the front. So the fact that you've turned out just to see us four talk about football is phenomenal. So thank you very much. I'd also like to welcome our special guests this evening. They're here in, not to be quizzed, but they're here from the Former Players Association. Matt Carmichael, Paul Ward and Gavin Gordon. So a round of applause for them. Thank you for coming, chaps. Genuinely, we were also meant to have Moses Swabu this evening. He was meant to be at the game. I know you're smiling, it's not actually a joke. He was genuinely meant to be here. He genuinely was, but he chickened out. See?
It took hours, hours.
I said it'd go down well. Shall we get on with the podcast?
I think we'll get on with the podcast.
Let's
this
try.
Where me and Charlie
Is this where we leave?
What episode number was it? 203?
No, it's 374.
374. Okay, brilliant. I'm ready now.
I think.
Hello and welcome to episode 374, I hope, of the Stacey West Podcast. I'm your host, Gary, but this evening it's a very, very special episode of the Stacey West Podcast because Chris Lamming's on it.
I know, aren't we all just so looking forward to that?
And of course, a big welcome to our live studio audience.
Woo! I wasn't expecting that, Gaz, to be honest. That really threw me under the bus there, mate.
Fucking hoping for it. So, what we're going to talk about today?
That's my job, is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're going to try and talk about Shrewsbury Town this afternoon. 1-1 in a game I think all of us went to the ground earlier, didn't we, today, expecting, well, a lot more of an entertaining game and therefore a lot more of an entertaining podcast this evening. But we'll do our best for the next 30 minutes or so. And after that, there will be a little bit of a drinks break, followed by...
We know that. This is the live podcast. We've done that bit, Chris. So first of all, basically this afternoon's game, like you say, I think we all expected something a little bit better, didn't we? It wasn't. I mean, even when the team sheet came out, it looked relatively attacking. People have been asking for Eric Ring to start. Probably that was the big talking point, other than Lewis Monsma starting as well.
Yeah, probably that, and Joe Gardner getting another start as well. I think it's probably fallen quite favourably for both Gardner and Ring, with the unfortunate news of Dom Jeffries and Jovan McCarr are going to be missing for the rest of the season. As Ben and I mentioned on Thursday, it was kind of inconclusive what was going on with Jeffries, but I think the fact he was not part of it today would go to show that that's his season done as well. But that means that there are two kind of wide positions up for grabs for the last 3 or 4 games of the season, Eric Ring and Joe Gardner, given the opportunity from the start today. So yeah, those two plus Monsma, I think, were the big talking points. Maybe not even the inclusion of Monsma, but more the not inclusion of Tom Hamer, who I think has been outstanding recently. Yeah,
I agree with Tom. I think I was quite surprised to see Lewis on. Is that echoing? Is that a little bit feedback, or is that just me? That's just me. Yeah, I was quite surprised to see Lewis in, because, to be fair, it sounds really harsh, but he hasn't impressed me as much as Tom. But do you think that's with one eye on next season, trying Lewis out in a 2?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. He obviously played in a back 4 under Michael Appleton, but has been more kind of suited to probably a 3. And even before he joined Lincoln, he kind of played in a 3. So I definitely think it was a one eye on next year. I think Tom Hamer in the last few games has shown that he's probably going to be one of our starting centre-backs next season. Adam Jackson has got a contract extension to play for, and Lewis has had an enforced kind of stop-start season due to his injury rehab. So I'm guessing this pairing was kind of, they both got something to prove. So particularly playing against the front 2, I thought was interesting, because it'll be a 2v2. But I don't, in all honesty, I'm not sure Lewis had the best of his games. No,
not today. I mean, we'll obviously come on to that. I probably agree with you. But other than that, it was pretty much business as usual. James Collins as the lone striker, and for the first 10 minutes I thought we were in absolute complete control. Now, the first thing I messaged you, I think it was 30 seconds into the game, and I'll use language, if there's any young people in, my apologies, and people who are 20 seem young to me, but if there's any young people in, the first thing I messaged you was, this referee's shit, because there was just one or, there was just one or two little things. Ben, we've got some feedback, mate, over here. There was one or two little things, just silly little, like pulling play back, not playing on, even just in the first 30 seconds or so. But I thought we played through that well. We looked like we were in absolute complete control. Pete, who's here tonight, said 5-0 in the fan zone. And when we got the goal, it probably felt like that was what it was going to be like.
Yeah, it did feel like that. We started the game brilliantly. On your message, it came through at 3 o'clock on the dot, so it must have been just a few seconds.
Did it really?
Yeah, a few seconds after the kickoff.
I'm not judgmental on referees.
I kind of got the feeling, I thought, we've got one here that maybe is not going to necessarily play into our hands, going to be a bit kind of pernickety and stop the game regularly. I don't think it was too bad actually in the end in regard to the kind of intensity. That was more our own doing, but intensity was really good for the first 10 minutes or so. Even before the goal, I thought Joe Gardner particularly shone. He was just so direct. What I like about Joe is if he does lose the ball, he's kind of already reacted and won it back before the kind of defenders kind of recognise that he's lost it. So his counter press is really, really good. But it was just superb goal of kind of individual quality when it came.
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, because we haven't seen the highlights, so I am working on memory, but there was the overlapping run. I had Pete, again, who's here, screaming at the side of me, going, pass it, pass it, pass it, and then Baelish just like dips his shoulder, cuts inside, curls it round. Phenomenal finish. Felt like keeper may have done better, but Tom also didn't particularly celebrate massively with it being his former club as well. Where do you stand on that? Because if I play for one team and I move and score against them, I'm celebrating.
Oh, I respect it. I absolutely respect it. Yeah, I think we saw him pre-season. We went to that sponsors thing, didn't we? And we had a chat with him. And even then, he kind of refused to say too much about Shrewsbury. I think he was quite respectful of them, and I think we don't know Tom too well, but we met him a couple of times. He seems like just quite a nice sort of chap, and tends to do the right thing. So I had no issue with that at all. I was delighted for Tom that he scored a really good goal on Rico's overlap. That was just a really good run. Bearing in mind Rico was playing in the 10 and then made a run wide to create space. Let's not forget Tom was playing as one of the 2 6s, but was able to kind of be free and advance forwards, and just a brilliant goal. And like you said, it felt like at that moment the floodgates could open. It felt like it could be a much easier job for us sat up here right now. But it wasn't really, was it? I think we really kind of took our foot off the gas from that moment on.
Yeah, we did. I mean, 1 or 2 players I thought did relatively well. I thought Tom played well all game, but not outstandingly well. And again, I keep referencing Pete, but it's because I've been sat with. He says his kind of method is all players start on a 6 out of 10, and you have to do something good to step into a 7, or you have to do something bad to drop down into a 5. And I felt there was probably only a handful of our players, probably 3 off the top of my head from that point on, that did enough to be rated as a 7. Sean Rowan, obviously, and I'm not related to Sean Rowan, I just really like him. I know I go on about it, but Sean Rowan is a massively underrated player. I thought he had a calm and competent game throughout. Thought Tom Bailey's played relatively well, but like I say, he just dropped off. And I don't know, there was the accusation against Charlton that the players would be on the beach, which I didn't particularly like, and we obviously weren't. We were at it. But it did feel after the goal as if we just thought this is now going to be a relatively straightforward kind of task. And, our fans started singing You're Going Down, which, I get it. And I wouldn't mind if it was at anybody other than Shrewsbury, who I have a little fond affection for. And obviously I like Michael Appleton, so I feel it was a little bit harsh there. But that's what football supporters do. And no doubt I would have joined in if it was anybody like Steve Evans or Rotherham or something like that. But what kind of happened? Why do you think that there was the drop-off? Do you think it was a case of just taking a foot off the gas? Because Shrewsbury didn't get any better, did they? I mean, they were awful throughout.
Yeah, they were poor. They were poor in 2 different ways in the first half and second half. I wouldn't say they were that bad in the first half. I think we allowed them back into the game because we'll obviously get onto their goal in the 23rd minute. But they had a couple of opportunities before that. But I think it was mainly our own doing. I don't know if it was intentional. But I think Michael, I don't know if anyone's heard Michael's post-match press conference, but he even said he kind of felt we maybe did take our foot off the gas a little bit. And that's not something you can really criticise our team is doing very often this season. It's kind of understandable, I think, with this point in the season, but Michael's been really keen to state how important it is that there is plenty to play for. Each individual player's got plenty to play for, haven't they? So it was interesting to see that happen, but honestly, I think it was just too easy for us. I think at that point we started so well, Shrewsbury couldn't get out their own half, and maybe when you score that early goal, you just feel, well, we've done the hard work now, they're not going to get back into this. And you've only got to lose kind of 1% here and 1% there for it to really have a knock-on effect. Because I don't think we were particularly poor as such. We were just a bit boring, really, weren't we? We're quite safe with our passes, a little bit slow. And, yeah, Shrewsbury were allowed to kind of get back into the game a little bit.
So a little bit more like we were in February, pre-beating Crawley 4-1 when we were a little bit laboured.
I don't know.
Sideways passes. There was a few times, because most of our attacks came down the right-hand side, and Eric Ring got a start. I actually thought he was really poor today. I don't think he ever really got in the game. A couple of our deliveries were a little bit off as well, but he did feel like, not that we'd got the game won, because I don't think professional footballers are ever really guilty of that. As fans, you kind of go, they're on the beach and all that. I don't think that's technically right. But there was obviously something that wasn't quite right. And one thing that obviously wasn't quite right was a foul on George Wickens in the 23rd minute. Luckily, when you said in the 23rd minute, you meant of the game and not this podcast, because otherwise we're going to have to string it out for another 10 minutes first. Their goal shouldn't have stood. And that's not rose-tinted spectacles, that's a foul on Wickens.
It is, yeah. I have to say, I have had the luxury of seeing the replay back, and it is a foul. And it's nice to kind of have that confirmed, because at the time, I didn't actually think it was. I thought it was a bit messy. It felt a little bit against the run of play to an extent, in that I don't think Shrewsbury really deserved a goal, but it wasn't like their first shot. They had got down our left-hand side a couple of times and got a shot away or a couple of opportunities. So they were threatening to an extent. And maybe it's because at the end of the season we've got nothing to play for. I just felt like that though, because I wasn't that threatened, because it didn't really matter, did it? Whether we won, lost or drew, we all wanted to have a nice, entertaining win, but it didn't really matter. We're not going up, we're not going down, etc. But the goal itself, it's absolutely 100% a foul. The player gets, George Wickens doesn't get the ball. And of course, from that moment, it looked a little bit messy. I think the players were expecting a whistle and maybe kind of stopped a little bit, apart from, I can't remember who it was on the line that almost cleared it. Of course it was. But
got a tracker on him, I could tell.
yeah, of course you have. It looked a bit of a mess, but no one seemed to mind too much, did they? Let's be honest.
I think I'll come back onto the goal in a minute, but you made a point that I want to pick up on. You say it didn't really matter whether we win, lost or drew. And I've felt like that for a few weeks now. I don't think we've been going up or down since we beat Crawley 4-1. And I think I've enjoyed it more. And I don't know if that's me being a bad fan or not, but when we've got something to play for, I remember the run into the 2016-17 season. And by the way, it's disconcerting that the microphone seems to now be at forehead height. I don't know if I've shrunk or what's happened. I remember playing like Bromley or something like that, and we won 1-0. If I remember correctly, Alan Power was sent off and Billy Knott scored, potentially. I might be wrong. But I remember hating every minute of it until we scored, and then hating every minute of it until the final whistle went, and then we're all Sweet Caroline in the stands. Is it wrong to enjoy football more when there's nothing on the line?
Yeah, I think it is. No, I get your point. I think a more recent comparison is the end of this season to the end of last season, isn't it? Because going into last season, we were chasing, but we had every game really meant something.
Yeah, hated it.
Yeah, and it gets the better of your heart rate's high, you're sweating, you're not really enjoying the game, but you kind of live for that excitement and that kind of living on the edge a little bit, don't you? And then when you do score a goal or you get the result you want, it does matter more because of the risk and the tension. But it is sometimes quite nice just to sit and watch a game of football and enjoy it without any real stress. So yeah, if we were playing Shrewsbury before we played Crawley and we'd scored early, started well, dropped off, and then they'd had a couple of half chances and then got the equaliser that it did, it would have mattered a lot more. I'd have been far more angry. I would have enjoyed it less. And so I get your point. So maybe it's easy to deal with a less than perfect performance when it doesn't matter as much. But I don't think I could say I enjoy it more.
Well, there wasn't a lot of sad faces coming in here tonight, and I think if it had been after Cambridge, for instance, when there was still something to play for and we'd drawn that 1-1, I think it was a little bit different. Or Stevenage, the 0-0 draw with Stevenage. So after the goal, up until half-time, I've literally no idea what happened because it was just terrible, wasn't it? I mean, it was just nothing. It wasn't terrible football, just nothing happened, did it? I mean, I'm sure you've got... How many pages of notes have you got?
Yeah, nothing happened.
I've got... Literally nothing happened up until half-time. Gav, who sits behind me, had a little moan. He was tired. It did feel at that point like end of season. And what really surprises me about that is it didn't matter to us. Not at all. Shrewsbury had to win that. They had to win today to try and stay up. And as you know, I'm a Michael Appleton fan, and anyone that listens to the podcast knows he's a lovely guy. He doesn't come across like that. He comes across as quite aggressive, but he's a really nice guy. But I can't understand why they didn't have a go. I mean, is it lack of ability in the squad, lack of confidence? I mean, they're now, I think, goal difference. They're level on points. They can only get the same amount of points as Burton, but their goal difference is much worse. So unless they win every game like 5-0, which ain't going to happen, they're going down.
Yeah.
That lack of urgency really surprised me.
It did me as well. Yeah, I think looking at some of the press conferences from Shrewsbury staff, so Michael Appleton being one, but even kind of players and things, it did seem like they kind of resigned to relegation, but you'd expect them to at least have a go until it's confirmed.
Sorry.
But they didn't really. I think one thing that we did see from Michael Appleton is he did actually change style, which is something I don't think he ever did when he was manager for us. They relentlessly played in a way that we would probably expect them to play in the first half. So maybe that's kind of plan A, and that's the best they could do. It suited us. Like, that's how they played in the first half. Should have been, playing into our hands really, and it did in the first 5 minutes, of course, until we scored. So was that their version of really giving it a go? Is following the plan of the gaffer and the style because they believe that's the right way of playing football or the most likely way of getting a win? But let's be honest, that's never the most likely way of getting a win against us. So I was really surprised by it. I was surprised how little urgency there was in their play. Like, as much as we like to have intensity in our game, you could understand a team in our position wanting to take their time at set pieces and slow the game down and just kind of almost get it over and done with. I wouldn't criticise us of doing that, but you could understand teams in our situation to do that. But to see them doing it in the first half was baffling, absolutely baffling.
Felt a little bit, I'm going back to maybe early Premier League years, might have even been before that, when there was a Man City team who thought, I think it was Man City, Pete will correct me if it wasn't, who thought they needed a draw to stay up, but they actually needed a win, and it got to a draw and they were knocking it across the back, and then the news came through they actually needed to win, and it felt like that. It's almost like, do they think that drawing here is going to be some sort of good result? And Michael Appleton is essentially on a 6, 7, 8 game job interview. Because he said, there was a BBC thing came out yesterday, he said he wanted the job, he was looking beyond this season, he was obviously talking about his battle with cancer and how it had changed him as an individual, and you actually saw quite a human side to Michael Appleton, which, as I've said a million times before, I've seen, and I kind of, it resonated with me, and I respected him for that. But to put that out then in the news kind of made me think, this is his job interview, this is him almost, pushing his case. And then somebody else that was pushing his case, which we'll talk about before the second half, was the big man from Rotherham, Mr. Evans, who somehow clambered up to the upper echelons of the what I call the Lego brick stand, and there was quite a murmur. I think it was it Steve who messaged me and said Steve Evans is in the 200 club, and my first thought was, I don't feel so bad for getting second helpings of the bangers and mash now, because he's definitely going to go and get some of that. Now, I've had a mate of mine from Bradford message say when the Bradford job was going, Steve Evans bought himself a ticket, turned up, sat on his own, watched a game to get the press talking and to get fans talking, because you'll see him, obviously, and so it's almost like he's putting himself out there. Do you think that it was just coincidence? Because he's probably not scouting at the minute, is he? Or do, I don't know, managers do that?
I mean, yeah, they would if they're eyeing up a job, you'd have thought. So
you think he's got his eye on it?
I think he's definitely having a look at Shrewsbury. I don't think he would choose to come and watch a random Lincoln City match. I think of any team he could pick to choose, there's probably this fan base that dislikes him, amongst many, of course, but dislikes him probably more than most. So I would be incredibly surprised if it wasn't for some tactical reason, if you like, from his perspective. But on Michael Appleton, I hope he gets the job, by the way, and like the long term. It's interesting to hear that they're planning for the future. In all of his press conferences, he's kind of said they're not giving up, but they definitely are looking at next season. You don't play the style of football how they did in the first half and how they have since he's come in to try and stay in League One. But if you've got slightly more talent than the majority of teams in League Two, that style of football is more likely to get you promoted than what they were doing under Gareth Ainsworth. So it's almost like, a bit like us really, maybe like an extended pre-season, I think, for Michael. But while it's not mathematically certain that they're going down, I was surprised to see them be so passive in the first half.
They're going down.
Yeah.
Well, there's not any question about that. I think that they should organise a little Royal Rumble between Michael Appleton and Steve Evans, and the winner gets the job. I think that would be far better. But I actually think Evans is probably more suited to the Shrews squad now and to the way that they've been playing under Ainsworth and to a degree Cottrell than Michael Appleton. So he's got some changes to make. But we're not a Shrewsbury podcast. True. We're a Lincoln City podcast. We're just trying to pad because not a lot happened. So second half, I mean, my first notes are the subs coming on and the Lewis Monsmer's miss. Because again, it was just a bit beige, wasn't it? And there was one or two players I think drifted from the game in the second half. I think Rico's got a lovely touch, lovely finesse, but I think that he drifted in the second half until he went out wide. I thought Conor McGrandles had a tough afternoon again. There was one or two passes went astray. I don't think anybody played badly particularly. Maybe Monsmer. I thought his distribution was a little bit off today.
Yeah, that stood out more in the second half, didn't it? And I think that was partly tactically from Shrewsbury. Like we said, first half, like it's amazing how important goal kicks are now, isn't it? It's amazing. If Shrewsbury have a goal kick, how much of an attacking opportunity that is for us, particularly how in the first half they set up, they're going to play every single time. You can take risks in our approach, but they abandoned that in the second half completely. And it's not just goal kicks, it was the whole kind of approach, but the goal kicks is a kind of rehearsable moment where that can happen. So there's a real shift there. They just played so deep, almost as if we've got something to hang on to now, because they got to half-time at 1-1. It would only be, I think, the fourth game in like 13 or 14 matches that they haven't lost if they hung on to that point. So accepting relegation, which it seems like they had by their approach, maybe it was a case of let's just hang on to from their perspective, a positive result. But that made it really hard for us because we struggled all season to break down teams in a low block. We're good at when teams try and play. We're good when there's kind of counter-attacking opportunities. But we aren't great at breaking down teams in a low block.
We're better in the 4-2-3-1 than we are in the 3-5-2.
We're more likely to do it in that, yeah, definitely. And I think it was telling that once Shrewsbury abandoned their approach, they offered absolutely nothing. I think their XG, there we go, 33 minutes and a half till we get to XG. It was 0.04 though in the second half, like they had a single shot.
What was ours?
1.82 overall, and in the second half was 1.28. So we just had to score a goal in the second half, not necessarily through clear-cut chances, but through accumulation of plenty of chances, plus Lewis and a sitter, of course. So we were absolutely dominant in terms of territory, in terms of possession, which doesn't always suit us, by the way, but without really the drive, might be the word, to really kind of knock them for six, really, and they just kind of hung on. But they offered nothing going forward in the second half, Shrewsbury. It was about us. I'm with you on the subs. I think the subs did offer a little bit, definitely, particularly Ben House. I think Ben House came on and made a real impact. Just tried to add a bit of drive into the game more than anything. I think
it was fight as well.
Yeah, and he allowed us to win it back kind of centrally, didn't he? So Rico, I'm with you. I think he has had better games in the 10 role. He was all right, but I don't think it was his best game in that role. When he went out wide, he kind of perked up again a little bit on the right-hand side. But Ben is a number 10 in this system that's a completely different profile to Rico, but it kind of suited him. Just a game that's a bit dull, a bit slow, a bit lethargic. It did give us a little bit of something. It didn't lead to a goal, but I don't think Ben himself could have done much more than he did.
No, well, I think sometimes you need somebody to come on and just put a bit of bloody fight into it, don't you? And I was talking again before the game about the Sheffield United Plymouth game, and you got Chris Wilder kicking off, and they're all having a set two in the tunnel. And do you know what? Part of me says that you want to see that sometimes. And okay, I didn't want to see Ben House come on and smack somebody in the face, but I wanted to see him come on and be an agitating little bastard, and that's what he was. He got in people's faces. There was that moment where there was some pushing and shoving, and you think, finally, a little bit of life, a little bit of something, and sometimes that can turn a game, can't it? So, but he wasn't one of the subs that I made notes on. Actually, I made a note on Ethan Arahan just purely because what a delight to see him back. I mean, he is an exquisite footballer. If footballers were cars, he would be the Rolls Royce, or I don't know if that's a good car, to be fair, because I don't have one. Whatever.
Sounds like it.
Well, yeah. Do you know what I mean? It was just he came on and he's got a little bit of swagger. He'll beat a couple of players. He's a lot better with his feet than most defensive midfielders. He can wiggle his way away from two or three players. Spreading passes around, and it's only when you see him back you think, oh God, that's what we've missed. Because actually we've been on a good run, and although Conor McGrandles has been a bit of a punchbag for some people, and I've criticised him at times, he's actually done relatively well because he's not a dedicated six. Am I allowed to say numbers as positions? Central defensive midfielder, whatever you want to call him. He's not just that. He's more box to box, like Ethan Hamilton, like Tom Bayliss, who's maybe a bit more advanced. So it's kind of been a square peg in a rectangle hole. It fits, but there's still a little bit of wiggle room. Whereas with Ethan Arahan, you just know what you're getting. But do you think that that's one of his final appearances now at Sincil Bank? He's got Bolton and Wrexham left, because this will be the summer, won't it? And do you wonder also, follow-up question, do you think that's why we've kind of tried to get him back as quickly as we can rather than nursing him back?
Yeah, partly. I think he's obviously a massively saleable asset for us, isn't he? And of all the players in the squad, I do think we've got a handful that could go for money, that would be profit.
Sean Rowan.
Yeah, well, he's one, isn't he? McJovan, of course, being one. But yeah, Ethan, I think, is the prized asset. He's the one that's going to be worth the most right now, if the market was open right now. But so yeah, do I think that it makes total sense to get him back in the team now to kind of prove to potential buyers that he's fit? Yeah. Also helps us, doesn't it? Does help us finish the season well and gets him in the team and potentially for next season. I would love for him to still be part of this football club next season. Absolutely love it. But it's only a good investment if you get paid at the end of it. And there has to be a right time to have that kind of exit. But I think one thing that's quite good with Ethan that maybe isn't as public maybe as other players, I'm sure there are similar agreements, is that everyone knows that there is a fee over £1 million that if a club pays, we will accept, and then it's up to Ethan if he wants to go and progress his career. Like, everyone knows that's the situation. Like we say, it's quite common these days, so maybe that to be written in contracts or at least to be kind of a gentleman's agreement. But it's been quite public, I think, with Ethan, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it was mentioned, I think, by Jez when we signed him that part of the discussion was the exit. Like, how much does it need to be for him to leave and progress his career? Ideally with us, but if he progresses faster than us, then what would it be? So
but quickly, when's the best time to sell him? Pre-season or in the winter?
Yeah, not in the middle of the season. Definitely not in the middle of the season.
So therefore, surely this is the time, because you wait till the end of next season, his contract starts coming down, and he may be thinking of running it down. And
yeah, I think we've got a year on it, a year option, and he's got 2 left, something like that.
Okay.
So
wow.
I could be wrong. It might be one less than that, but I don't think he's out of contract at the end of next season.
No,
so it's not like we're
no.
desperate to sell him now.
Fair enough.
But I think his value will be at its highest because of his contract this summer. But just quickly on McGrandles, because I think we have all probably been a little bit guilty of a little bit of criticism to Connor, and I do think some of it has probably been harsh. We've kind of mentioned that like passing statistics are probably not a lot different to anyone else, and he is kind of a square peg playing in a rectangle hole. That's quite a good analogy, actually. Did you get put up?
I thought about it on my run this morning.
Did you? Bloody hell. Did you know he runs? But yeah, it absolutely did show as soon as Ethan came back into the team what we've been missing, and that isn't a huge discredit to Connor McGrandles.
No,
I think it's just a massive credit to Ethan. Like he's superb, isn't he? He's absolutely made for that role. I think he'll be even better with 2 in there because he's got a playmate, hasn't he? So give him a little bit more freedom. The other one can probably progress on a little bit more.
So would you rather, if that's the case, which of McGrandles, Bayliss or Hamilton would you prefer to be, and it's a great terminology, Ethan Arahan's playmate?
Tom Bayliss.
Sounds a little bit suspect, that, but I think Tom Bayliss as well.
Tom Bayliss, because Ethan can do the defensive work, but he's better on the ball than the other players that have been doing the defensive work.
Another substitute who came on was Zayn Okoro. It was a quiet debut for him, probably a tough one for him to come on, but again, it's nice to see another young player coming off the academy conveyor belt, particularly because the ones that we're talking about in Jovan and Freddie and Sean Rowan have actually come off the same cohort. So to see Zayn come into the side as he has now, obviously we've seen the likes of Alicia Huey and Hayden can kind of come and go, but Zayn feels like one that's going to come and could reach the same sorts of heights as Jovan and Freddie.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of variables, but it's very promising, isn't it? And it's always great just to see someone that's come through our system playing the first team. You know, we've been supporting this football club for 30 plus years, and there haven't been that many that have stuck around for too long that have really cut it. You know, we can probably name on one hand prior to this current crop who's really done it. And it's just great that it's almost like, well, who's next now? We're almost impatient now, aren't we? Like, right, who's next? We know that name now, let's have another one. But that's kind of a sign that things are going well, I think. But yeah, big moment for Zayn. Of course, he really impressed against Man City under 21s in his actual professional debut, I think that wasn't it. But this is his league debut. Very, very different sort of fixture, very different sort of opposition, particularly in the second half. And yeah, he was quiet. I don't think he really had a kick, did he? But big moment. And because of Dom Jeffries and Jovan Makama's absence now to the end of the season, a handful of games remaining, and only Eric Ring and Joe Gardner and potentially Rico that can play in those 2 wide roles, and you often see both wide players getting subbed in a game. I can see him getting more minutes between now and the end of the season, and that can only be a positive going into next season.
And I don't mean to correct you, but I think his professional debut was away at Chesham. I think that came after.
Of course.
Man City was just a little bit after that, and we were obviously at
Chesham,
and he came on and should have had a goal and did not. We are closing in on the end of the podcast, or the first half of the podcast, but there was one thing I noted in the second half, and again, credit to Pete, who I seem to be mentioning more than anybody for some reason. But there was the late moment where the ball went out of play. Michael Appleton signalled to bring his 2 subs on, and George Wickens rushed over and took the throw in. And I genuinely thought Appleton was going to chin him. he was absolutely apoplectic with rage. And as Pete said, he goes, if we score from this, and we did actually go forward and attack. Obviously, we didn't score because it ended 1-1. But that's the sort of thing that we haven't seen an awful lot of from a Lincoln City side, really, since Danny Cowley. We saw a little bit, perhaps under Mark Kennedy at times, but we've talked about that, obviously, call it shithousery, I suppose, but we've been a little bit more game savvy, I think, over the last couple of weeks. Do you think that's something that we've been working on, or do you think it's just something that's coming a little bit more naturally? Or do you think it was just an accident?
I think it's always fun when a goalkeeper takes a throw in, by the way.
Yeah,
I
haven't seen it before, I don't think.
But I don't think it's just the last couple of weeks. I think it's been probably since January. I think James Collins helps in that. He sets the tone a little bit. It's just experience, understanding of the game. We've got a young team, and yeah, he can be good on the ball, but you've got to learn that craft, haven't you? And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's about the opposite. It's knowing when to speed the game up, it's knowing when to kind of get a little bit of drive going, and sometimes we haven't seen that at times. But yeah, it was good to see a little bit of fight in the game, a little bit of just something happening, because it's particularly in the second half, let's be honest, there wasn't really a lot. I wrote down here, my highlight of the second half was a really, really big bumblebee flew past me. That was like the highlight for me for the second half. Not a lot happened else, did it?
Well, I was watching all the other results because there was some fascinating results. I'm looking at Swindon Bradford 5-4, and then I'm looking at our game thinking, wow. And something happened, because I've got to talk about this in front of a load of people later. Yeah. And then one thing that did happen, we've already talked about Mr. Evans, but as he left, do you know what? I think he realises he's a pantomime villain, and I can't believe I'm going to say this in front of real people. I kind of respect him a tiny little bit for that. He knows he's the villain. And as he I was watching him come down the stairs, because I thought if he goes, it's going to be like 10-pin bowling. There's going to be seats and stuff going over. And he was like, because it's not easy in that stand. Does anyone sit in the Lego brick stand? The old St Andrew. It can be hard getting out of there because it's a little bit off balance. And as he went in, they started chanting the Steve Evans song. And it was just as he disappeared into the tunnel, his hand just came up like that. And I was just like, do you know what? I've got an ever so slight begrudging respect for that. But
I don't respect him at all.
If Lincoln ever take him on, I will still pay for my season ticket, but I won't go and watch Lincoln.
I don't think that's likely.
Chance. I don't think Shrewsbury will either.
No, I think I'll stick with Mark Clapperton. I think he'd be a really good appointment for a League Two team that's looking for promotion.
Right,
but we're not Shrewsbury pod.
That is the half an hour, and I haven't had to jimmy you along at all. That's quite good going, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what we will now do is we'll take a break. So if you are listening at home, you'll basically get an advert, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. But if you're listening live in Tension Twisted Realities, you can quickly go to the bar where the bar staff are eager to serve you. If you have a Guinness, watch out for the blonde girl in the middle, because last time I was there, she opened a Guinness and it went all over a new Fred Perry top of mine, and I thought it was ruined. So just be really, really careful of Guinness girl. But thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll be back after the break.
Right, so welcome back from the break. For those of you listening at home, we've just had some adverts. For those of you in the room, this is slightly terrifying. Have lots of eyes on me and Charlie. We are indeed now going to talk about some of the loans that we've got on out away at other clubs. So, obviously, I think there's quite a few at the moment. There's a couple that we've not really been able to get too many stats on, primarily because there aren't that many stats on Peterborough Sports. But what we're going to do, we're going to start. We've asked around as well for a few quotes from people that we speak to for the podcast. Just to get some idea of how they're playing from an opposition fan's perspective. Some of them got back to us. So we're going to start off talking about JJ McKinnon. Obviously, JJ is on loan at Burton, 15 appearances, 1 goal, 1 assist. He's playing well. I caught the Burton Wrexham game the other week on the telly, and I thought even though Burton went down to 10 men quite early on in that game, JJ was pretty central in pretty much everything that they were doing. Which was limited due to the fact that they were down to 10 men against a team that are looking to go up. But yeah, he seems like he's playing well. He's been involved in most of their attacking threats when they've got them. And then the other things that we're going to do, obviously going to talk about whether they could be an option for us next season as well at Central Bank, or whether we'll see them move on in other ways. So Charlie, what have you seen of JJ?
A bit. Funnily enough. It's weird, by the way, because you've just said the goals and assists tally, and I expected it to be higher because of the amount that Burton fans are raving about JJ McKinnon.
Yes.
And through the bits that we've seen as well. Obviously, you can't watch the full 90 minutes of Burton Albion every week as well as Lincoln. You really would be bored stiff if you did that. But they do really seem to love him, and the impact that he's able to make in a couple of different positions as well, which is something we'll touch on in a little bit, where he is kind of plying his trade for Burton. I think, first of all, when he first went there, I was really pleased that he was going to another League One club, because again, it just shows the calibre of our players that we can't give full minutes to, and yet they're still going to bottom-end League One clubs as development loans rather than exit loans as well. And I was a little bit worried at the start that, okay, yes, he's in League One, but he's in a relegation scrap, and how's his kind of mentality going to be with that? From everything that Burton fans have been saying, that's not impacted him from the very start, and Burton have been on one hell of a run, including the absolute hammering they gave Huddersfield today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the thing that I was keen to do was obviously get the opposition's point of view. So we emailed Dave, Dave, fresh after you and him giving me a right roasting on the preview that you did.
Don't know what you're talking about.
He was gracious enough to give us a quote. So he says, essentially, JJ's been outstanding for Burton since arriving. Has been a regular midfield starter, great from box to box, a great engine, and really getting stuck in and playing with a smile on his face. He was kicked from pillar to post by Leyton Orient, but still came up smiling at the end. Only one goal, which is a little bit disappointing, but a key player in the revival under Gary Bowyer. So sounds like he's making friends and making fans over in Burton. Where do you see next season, Charlie, if he would be fitting in with us?
It's an interesting one because, again, we're talking about a player who's potentially playing a couple of different positions. At Burton, he's playing a little bit further back in kind of a more box-to-box role. So, we're then effectively talking, is he going to be looking to kind of play the Tom Bayliss as Ethan Aaron's playmate role, as was kind of coined earlier on, or is he going to be looking to play a little bit further forward in the 10 role that we've now kind of very much got in that 4-2-3-1? Honestly, I think it's going to be more the latter. If he's going to get the minutes, I think he's going to be in that 10 role, and he's going to be fighting with the likes of Jack Moylan when he's back, potentially Joe Gardner in that kind of central role, potentially Rico Hackett, Dom Jeffries. Obviously, he might miss the whole of pre-season, so it could be that JJ's got a few extra chances early on than because there's just a little bit less competition. And I just think he could be a real asset for chance creation in, realistically, maybe even any of those 3 positions behind the striker. Obviously, I probably wouldn't play him out wide, but I would also be intrigued to see how that could go if he was given that, because of the engine that he's quite clearly got on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like he's filling a creative role at Burton quite well. So whether he would maybe challenge for a first team position with the other players that we have that could play in that sort of 10 or the more central role would be a really interesting one. But it sounds to me like he's going to be a player that we should keep around the squad at least. It doesn't sound to me like it's going to be a player that he's going to go out again next season on loan and, maybe not quite smash it as much as he's done at Burton. He might go somewhere that he's not done particularly well at. So, yeah, for me, I think JJ next season, if he's not a guaranteed starter, he's at least a capable squad player for us. So next up was one that I think maybe seems a little bit disappointing on the surface of it, and that's Jay Ben. So Jay Ben, obviously gone to Bradford. He's got 11 appearances with 1 off the bench. He's got 3 assists, and he hasn't really played too much for them following a certain point in the season, which we will come to. And to me, this feels like it's one of those learning loans. I think we've heard them described as before, similar to Jovan's early loans, for example, where he went out, didn't play too much, and maybe didn't get the experience that he would have wanted, but he learned from it and he came back as a better player. So I think that the difference there, my understanding is that I'm not too sure on Jay's contract situation, but my understanding is it may be up this summer. At least that's what the available info says. So this is one where it is, okay, that loan might not have gone particularly well. Do we take the chance on him going further? And it's one that I'm really struggling to answer, to be honest with you.
If I'm honest, on just on that point, I doubt that he's a Lincoln City player this time next year. I doubt he's a Lincoln City player in 3 months' time after the retained list comes out, really. It is a difficult one. He's obviously not had the best of seasons, and this is really the second season in a row where he's kind of had a loan that has been hampered a little bit with injuries and things as well. For example, when he was at Solihull Moors the season before, they had a decent season overall, but he was kind of in and out. He had a really good start to the season, was playing really well, they loved him. Then he had a couple of injuries, a couple of knocks, just never really came back the same, to the point where he was just a bit of a bit part player for the last kind of 3 or 4 months. And I think for him to then progress into League Two immediately, going to Bradford, was always going to be a real promising move if he could back that up with his ability. I think the fact that he's then had a very kind of similar season in terms of his vein of form as he did the year before in the National League is, okay, on the one hand, great, because it doesn't mean that he's been that much worse when he's moved up a division, but I don't really see him moving now into League One and then being able to challenge, for example, Tendai Darikwa in that role. I think it's one of those where we tried, it didn't work, doesn't mean it failed or it was the wrong decision in the first place. It's just one of those kind of players that unfortunately we're going to move on and maybe not see again. But I think he'll still have a place in National League or low-end League Two football, hopefully.
Yeah, so we asked There's a Bradford City podcast called The Width of a Post. We asked there, and Jason from over there gave us a little bit on Jay Ben. He says, it's fair to say that Jay Ben's learned a lot about the harsh realities of professional football from his loan spell here. Started really well for him, quickly got into the side, dislodging our reigning Player of the Year, Brad Halliday. He then impressed everyone with his confidence, athleticism and work rate. In a setup that relied heavily on wing-backs, he thrived and continued defensively, as well as going forward. It quickly went wrong, a couple of unconvincing displays, notably a home defeat to Doncaster. It seemed then that opposition sides started to target him with the more physical side, and he couldn't really handle that. Then against Chesterfield, he said that Ben started, the team struggled badly. After 32 minutes, Alexander made a change and took him off. It was harsh, but the right call. We improved and then won the game, and he hasn't played since. He says there's no doubt a player there that think he needs a season on loan, playing week in, week out. And it arguably came a little bit too soon to him to go out to Bradford, and it's not necessarily paid off for him.
No, and I think with that kind of hearing from the Bradford side as well, it kind of reinforces the point that if this summer is the end of the contract, which I think we do believe it is, then it's probably about the right time for us to kind of part ways and say, look, it just hasn't worked. We wanted it to, it didn't. There's still a player in there, but it's about getting that out consistently over a full 46-game season. At the moment, he's had 2 opportunities to do that and hasn't. So I don't think we'll be taking the risk on him.
No. So next up, I was going to say that in terms of where he fits in with us next season, I think I agree with you. I don't necessarily think he'll be a Lincoln City player come the end of the summer. And it's one of those, isn't it? You know, project players sometimes don't work out, sometimes they do. And there we go. Next one up is Zach Bradshaw. So Zach Bradshaw came in, immediately went out on loan to Tranmere, and we kind of expected to see a couple of bits from him maybe. But again, there's not too much info on this because I think he's had a couple of injury problems. So I think, we said that, Charlie, if you want to lead on Zach?
Yeah, so he has had a couple of injury issues throughout the course of the year, a little bit similar in a way to actually Jay Ben's season last season when we're talking about what he was doing at Solihull, where, he was able to have a couple of decent games, but there was just no kind of consistency. I think, we're not going to go into the depths of Tranmere Rovers' form at the moment and the way that they are, but it's kind of not really a surprise that a player who we've sent out on loan there isn't really showing much consistency in terms of form, because that's basically their whole season. And I think in hindsight, it's one of those where maybe they just weren't the right team. Zach, he's still a young player. There was always the project with him to potentially look at making him into that kind of left centre half, left back, left wing back role, so that 18 months down the line from him signing, he could potentially be in and around the first team. I think that was kind of the understanding that was publicised when he first signed. Now, we're at the end of that 18 months from him first signing, and do we really see enough from any of the stats and any of the gameplay from watching him at Tranmere to really suggest that he can make that step up? I don't see it. I think when you look at the players that we've got in that position, especially that left centre half, left back, occasionally the left wing back role that he's also been playing, he's kind of been playing any of those three. Realistically, we have Sean Rowan in that position. Now, whether Rowan is here or not next year is a different story, but I don't really see enough from anything from Zach Bradshaw to say that he can come in as a direct replacement or even a secondary replacement. I would also argue, though, that it's too early to give up on somebody like Zach Bradshaw. You've got players who will just develop a little bit later. They all do it at different rates. Maybe jumping up into League Two straight out of the League of Ireland last year was the wrong move in hindsight. It's difficult to kind of put your finger on that one. But I suspect that he'll stay with us and we'll give him another loan opportunity with another club, potentially top-end National League, to give him more of an opportunity to be in a confident environment rather than, unfortunately, a club like Tranmere at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing for me that, so it seems like this isn't going to be his last loan for us. He will be a player that will have another one because he's been signed as a project player. We're aware of that connotation. It's on a longer contract, so he'll go out again, and hopefully again, he'll have a situation similar to, as previously said, with Jovan. If he goes out, has a difficult loan, learns from it, comes back, has a slightly better loan, and then finds his way into the squad. But yeah, I don't think he'll be part of the first team picture next season, given what we've heard so far. Somebody that probably will, though, given his record at his lone club, Rob Street.
Yeah.
We had several conversations about Rob Street before he went out on loan, and he didn't necessarily seem confident enough to play in the first 11. But then he's gone out to Doncaster, and I'll let you take it away, Charlie. He's been phenomenal.
He has. I think, first of all, when Rob Street first signed, we heard from Jez George in particular that the club had chased him for a couple of years and they were big fans of his out-of-possession work, and he could be kind of the direct Ben House style player in the team as well. And he had a bit of pace with him, maybe not the biggest of players, but he could have a role in that. But the one thing, when you just looked at his stats, he played plenty of games and his goal scoring record just really wasn't there. And I think that worried kind of a few fans when we're bringing a striker in like that, for whatever the price tag was on him. And then he goes to Doncaster and has scored 8 goals already. And
you look at the numbers,
hit that 8 mark quite quickly.
Yeah, like 10 starts, 6 off the bench, 8 goals. It's just a fantastic spell for him. I think going out somewhere to get confidence when he's clearly low on it, you go, okay, go down to League Two, score a few for Doncaster, and he's come back, and when he comes back, hopefully he'll be absolutely brimming with it.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting pre-season for him as well, I think. But you mentioned earlier on that we'd kind of reached out to a few different podcasts from other clubs to try and get a note on some of the players from their fans' perspectives. We didn't get a response from the Doncaster one, but I've got a friend of mine who was a Doncaster fan. Well, is a Doncaster fan, not was. I know they only drew today, but yeah. And asked him, what's your thoughts on Rob Street? Give me a couple of lines. And he just goes, he's good. We want him. Now, that's then kind of opens up a whole new can of worms of actually where do we see him next season? Is he going to be in and around our first team squad in that kind of sole striker role? I would like to think that he at least gets the opportunity, but that again, a League Two or a promoted League Two club comes in, bids a decent amount of money, and maybe the club do go ahead and consider it. Now, I think that would have to be quite a good bit of money, considering the fact that we have signed him with a view to the future.
Well, I think the fact that we signed him on a 4-year deal,
exactly, yeah,
and he's been out on loan for half of this season.
Yeah,
it would have to be a huge number to even consider.
But if you're doing those kind of numbers in the second half of League Two, and you're still you've got all of the other kind of attributes that go with that kind of speed and athleticism that you want from a striker, especially in League Two and League One, then maybe there will be a club circling. Now, I doubt that would be Doncaster in the first place, because they aren't really a team that likes spending too much money on players at the minute. They much prefer the free market and the loan market, and that's kind of going to be their strategy for next season from what I've kind of been hearing on that one. But no, I think it's great that he's had such a good spell with them. It's just going to be interesting to see whether or not he can replicate that next season, because bearing in mind, this time last year, there was somebody who played for Doncaster on loan from us that was putting up very similar numbers, and I don't really think any of us wanted Hakeem Adelak in the following season. So it's a difficult one to try and gauge.
I think, it's probably a bit of a false equivalence there, because obviously I think everybody knew that was an exit loan for Hakeem, and it's like you've got, I think that the key thing is that Rob very clearly wanted to do well here. It didn't work out for him straight away. He needed to go somewhere, and he needed to score some goals, get his confidence back, and hopefully develop into a player. And to be honest, I think, given the fact that we're going to go with one up top next season, obviously James Collins is going to be the main man for most of it. But in terms of options off the bench, it makes sense to have Rob Street there to me.
Freddie Draper and Rob Street as the two options for that number 9 role off the bench?
Potentially
work,
so,
yeah.
That to me, that makes sense. I don't see the point in having one. We can't rely on one, as has been proven by...
We've been there before.
Yes, absolutely. So, but yeah, okay. And mentioned exit loans, one that we're pretty sure is an exit loan. Ali Smith, AFC Wimbledon. 41 games now, with 6 goals as of today and 4 assists. Seems to be very highly rated. AFC Wimbledon's got a few Man of the Match awards. Scored 2 games on the trot. Scored against Harrogate, and who did they play today?
Doncaster.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so he scored against Doncaster today as well. Seems to be pretty key part of their playoff push, doesn't he?
Well, he scored and Rob Street didn't, so I say we keep Ali Smith and get rid of Rob Street. He's this was always going to be an exit loan. It didn't work out for us with us for a number of reasons. But I really like Ali Smith as a player. I still do. I think he's got a great future. But the question is his peak going to be top end League Two? I would be surprised if he isn't at either a very highly rated promotion chasing League Two side next season once his contract's up in the summer, or he is in League One. That could even be with AFC Wimbledon at this rate as well. I really like the player. I think there's something in there. It didn't work out for us, but I'm just glad to see him doing well, because I think again it just reinforces the point that even if they didn't work out for us, they're still good players. We were probably still right to try and bring them in when we did, because they are able to thrive in just other capacities rather than at Lincoln City.
Yeah, and whether that's just it doesn't fit in the system or personality clash, whatever it is. But I do find it interesting that we're now getting to the point where we have players that are in our squad that maybe we don't think are quite there to play in our first 11, and they're going out to teams in the same division as us, or if they're going down to League Two, they're going down to the top end of League Two. I mean, you look at the list there of players that are out there. You've got AFC Wimbledon, you've got Doncaster. There are players, but they're all in the top 6.
Yeah.
So they're obviously doing something right with who they're targeting for them. So, right, and then we come to the ones that are out on loan at non-league clubs. We'll start with 2 that we again can't get a huge amount of info on. MJ Kamara and Jamie Pardington, both at Peterborough Sports. What we've seen, they seem to be doing fine. There's nothing to complain about too much there. The big one for me is obviously Oshin out at Boston. It's one of those. He went there. It seemed like there was a bit of excitement about it. 4 games in, gets smashed by an absolute horror tackle, and he's not been seen since.
Which is during Boston's great run as well, where it looks as though they are almost safe.
Well, the 6 points clear.
Yeah.
As an aside, I'm genuinely delighted for Boston, and I will be until we're in the same division, and I want them to fail. He seems like a real prospect, and he was impressing in those 4 games. I just hope that this injury doesn't set his career back too much.
I think with Oshin, it's a bit of a difficult one, because we've heard so many times, and it feels, by the way, that we've spoken about Oshin Gallagher going into pre-season for what feels like 10 years, because we're constantly having the same conversation with him of he's really highly rated by the manager, whichever manager it is at the time, because they all seem to have liked certain parts of his style. We'd maybe like to see him play a few more minutes, EFL Trophy games and things like that, which he's been doing for the last 2-3 years. And yet he's still going out on loan to League of Ireland or non-league clubs. And there is a part of me that's just a little bit worried when it comes to Oshin Gallagher of, okay, when does it have to be now rather than next year, soon, it's coming?
He's still young, though.
No, he is. But I think we've been here before with many academy players, haven't we? We've been here with a Hayden Can, for example, of, they're going to be progressing through the system, through the non-league sides, going into the Football League for a loan maybe, and then breaking into the first team. And it keeps on being soon, and unfortunately it doesn't happen. Now, I still see a lot in Oshin whenever he plays in any kind of trophy games for the first half of the season or anything like that. I think he always impresses. He doesn't look out of place, but I think the fact that is all he's getting at the moment for like a good few years running, and just starting to kind of veer away from thinking that he is going to be a future first team regular, and thinking, okay, maybe this is one of those where we are trying for a long time. Maybe he goes out and we do something like a buyback clause, and we sell him off and do something like that, which, it's not that uncommon in football anymore. So we keep a future interest no matter what, and then let him progress. Because at the end of the day, look, we had a conversation with Liam Scully at some point a couple of years back, and I remember him saying the way that we want to run the academy and help our young players is just to make them into professional players. If that's at Lincoln City, that's great, but we want them to be professional players regardless. So I think there's got to be a point where they look to see what's best for Oshin as well. And again, I'm just starting to worry that the future of him at Lincoln City, it has to start being now sooner rather than later, or else it will be let's let him go and thrive somewhere else, hopefully, and keep that future interest.
No, it's a fair point. I hope for Oshin's sake that he can forge a career still.
He definitely, like you say, he's still young. He's definitely got the potential to do that. Let's just hope this big injury doesn't set him back too much.
No, absolutely. And then obviously the final one, just before we wrap this one up, is of course Tyler Walker, who is on an obvious exit loan. 6 and a bit games as of today. 1 goal, 1 assist. I mean, look, we've made no bones about it on the podcast. We're big fans of Tyler, and we're desperately disappointed that it hasn't worked out for him at Lincoln City. The fact that it was a series of different injuries that have kept him from coming back into the first team was just desperately sad. And the fact that he's managed to get a loan out at Wealdstone seemed like it was going to be great. Okay, cool, get your career kick started again. Within 2 games, I think he'd had a goal and assist. And I thought, okay, cool, yeah, he might do all right. They're obviously trying to stay up alongside Boston. And then today I saw that he went off after 27 minutes, which just made me think, oh.
Yeah, look, I'm pleased that Tyler has been playing regular football again. It's a shame that it didn't work out in this spell with us. Again, the euphoria when he signed was incredible. I think we all jumped on a live show that night, didn't we? Because it was one of those signings that you wanted to talk about. But, unfortunately it hasn't worked out. I don't know where his career goes from here. It's just a real sad shame when you think back to, those memories that he gave us 5 years ago, that chip against Ipswich around Christmas. And, those moments are the ones that you'll always remember his career by, even if now it's starting to kind of dwindle and he does end up playing non-league football for the next few years.
Absolutely. So there we go. That is all of our loans at the moment. We did get a couple of quotes from fans of other clubs. For those of you that are listening, that is going to be the end of the Stacey West podcast for this week. For those of you that I'll get my tongue in. For those of you that are in the room, we're going to have a couple more discussions. So I think drinks break. Yeah, quick drinks break, and then we'll speak to you in a minute. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.